A lot of things about Net-juu no Susume surprised me. From its lovable cast and wonderful art design to its intelligent use of its premise, it really goes far above and beyond what you might expect based on its title. And I'm sure you can check out some other great AniTubers who comment on that variety of elements. But what I would like to touch on today is the show's music. Yes, the soundtrack also surprised me in how effective it was at evoking emotion. It's quite easy for romance shows to fall into a rather generic format when it comes to the music, where it ends up getting the basic job done, but in the end leaving very little impact. Here though, the soundtrack really stands out as an excellent contributing factor to making the show as a whole great. In this video, I specifically will be taking a look at some of the music used in the series' penultimate episode, that being episode 9, as I would describe this episode as being the show's emotional peak, with episode 10 being a bit more of a comfy installment, slowly easing us down from the weight of the previous episode. I think the music too reflects this, thus the more intensely evocative tracks are present in episode 9. My aim with this analysis is to look a little deeper into what makes the soundtrack great and why it works so well through the lens of this particular episode. Of course, this will involve some brief descriptions of the story in this episode, so if you're one who is averse to spoilers, this is your warning. The first piece of note is introduced as Sakurai explains that he is the online friend Morioka had grown so close with, and that though he was unsure at first, through the evening he spent out with her a little while ago, he had become certain it was her. The swooning romantic strings cry out underneath their reflections on the past, enhancing the emotional effect as we recall these events from earlier in the show, and the romantic tension between the two builds. Steadily moving eighth notes begin the piece, matching Sakurai's recounting of his realization that she was the Hayashi he had grown so close to. The melodic line in the violin section gradually builds in volume and intensity as the scene grows, taking the forefront as their nervous conversation becomes the focus. The strictly moving eighth notes fall away, giving room for a much freer melodic line to follow, one that seems designed to match the flow of their conversation. The music rises playfully at her bashful stammering, but backs away at the start of Morioka's inner monologue, then slowly ebbing back in. Her tone shifts as she reflects on herself, doubtful of her own resolve and deeply critical of herself, and the music too reflects this. The strings cry out mournfully, hitting a heart-wrenching high note, then somberly descending in stepwise motion, trailing off as her train of thought fades and Hayashi's inner monologue begins to pick up. Though at first his thoughts seem pessimistic, he breaks the awkward silence and cuts off the strings with a tentatively positive thought. He brings up his joy at playing with Morioka, and the music follows suit, shifting character to a very warm tone. The double bass's distinct accentuation of the beat leading into the downbeat and the downbeat itself gives this moment a very round, comforting shape, which the wave-like rise and fall of the melody echoes. After this, we are left a brief moment of musical silence as Hayashi expresses his belief that his revelation of this knowledge is troubling to Morioka, and announces he will quit the game in order to avoid making things awkward. However, Morioka interjects with a heartfelt expression of her enjoyment in the time spent with him online, and her hopes to continue doing so into the future. A cheerful piano underscores this exchange, initially beginning with an upbeat melodic line which it explores briefly. The piece, while pretty, does start off quite plain, with the melody moving as one unit in the right hand, while simple arpeggiated chords in the left hand give support.
Lily-sanと林は相方です。だから、これからも。
For a moment, it seems this part will come to an end, with a brief decrease in the speed of the piece followed by a descending level of volume, all seeming to indicate that it is coming to a conclusion. But it suddenly defies expectations as we cut to a scene of Morioka and Sakurai walking underneath the moonlit sky.
よろしくお願いします。
Here, it repurposes the initial theme more subtly, with a more jazzy feel to it in its heavy use of 7th chords, and less direct melodic movement as before. The line moves continually, swaying up and down as the key melodic notes find their way in here and there. The general flow of the piece ascending upwards, before finally falling down from above with a great sense of release.
暖かかったです。食べ物までもらっちゃって。
また。
はい。
However, our expectations are defied one more time. Though we believe the piece to be over, after they have bid their farewells, Morioka suddenly calls out once more, a surprise to both us and Sakurai himself, and we hear the main melodic idea repeat once more.
Sakurai-san! またお暇な時に転職クエストとか手伝ってほしいんですけど。
However, the piece's conclusion is still delayed, with the chord before the last almost begging to conclude, but the final resolution being held off until it is almost too much.
はい。いつもお忙しい中ありがとうございます。おやすみなさい。
The music seemingly plays with how much it can continually defy our expectations, making us question if the scene will perhaps continue even at the final moments. In this scene, it makes good use of the upper register of the piano, which has a very unique timbre or character to the sound that does well to invoke the dreamy sensation of a moonlit night. For many, the piece that comes to mind in that relation is Debussy's Clair de Lune, and it similarly utilizes that aspect of the piano. After Koiwai slyly tricks Morioka and Sakurai into meeting each other at the park to break the awkward distance between the two, as their embarrassed and surprised stammerings begin, a very heartfelt piece enters. Fascinatingly, the musical idea here is almost a repeat of the one used during their meeting at night. At first, it follows the initial idea very closely, but whereas the other piece descended towards the latter half of the phrase, in this piece the line continues upwards.
ダメですか?
それは嬉しいです。
It's just similar enough to, perhaps subconsciously, raise thoughts of the moment prior, but still has a unique edge to it. The piece begins with an at-ease solo marimba, followed by a light touch of glockenspiel preceding the entrance of the strings section. Thereafter, the marimba coming back into spotlight, but this time with the glockenspiel playing a moderate counter melody above. The instrumentation is very effective. The marimba has a percussive but very resonant, woody sound, which lets the metallic ringing of the glockenspiel stand out clearly in contrast to it, while the marimba's sound gives it a sense of body, with the light touch of strings adding a bit of texture to the whole experience.
これ、今見せたらどんな顔するんだろうな。ま、いずれいじめてやろうっと。
It does well to suit the sweetness of the moment, especially as Koiwai looks on from afar in an almost nostalgic manner. Well, that's all for now. I hope this video did a sufficiently good job at showing why exactly I think this soundtrack works so well. If you know a show you'd like to see me cover it in the future, be it the music or something else, let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe and maybe even share the video around, it helps a lot. If you want to know what to watch next, I'd recommend checking out my video on my deep emotional connection with Hanasaku Iroha. Or if you're just looking for more music analysis, check out my video talking about some of the music in Sakura Quest. And if you really want to see more of me, follow me on Twitter at Core Reviews for my daily ramblings and links to all my content. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.